There are many theories about this place, but no one really knows. Stonehenge's mystery is its power.
Now to an incredible find overseas, an elaborate series of stone monuments believed to have been hidden for thousands of years, not far from the famous site of Stonehenge. And it suggests that mysteries that shroud this region.
Stonehenge. You think you know it? The giant stones, the ancient circle, the mysteries of the past.
We now know where these giant stones come from, but the research creates more questions.
But what if I told you that everything you've seen above ground is only half the story? Beneath Salisbury Plain lies a secret hidden for 4,500 years. Massive shafts, perfectly aligned, bigger than the stones themselves, discovered only when ground-penetrating radar scanned the Earth and revealed what human eyes could never see.
This ground-penetrating radar technology is revealing evidence, undisputable proof.
Who built them? Why? And what do they reveal about a civilization far more sophisticated than we ever imagined? Tonight, we peel back the Earth, listen to the stones, and follow the trail of a mystery that has been waiting millennia to be uncovered. Ancient void puzzle. Let me explain what ground-penetrating radar actually does, because it matters. The technology works by sending pulses of electromagnetic energy into the ground and measuring what bounces back. Different materials reflect the signal differently. Solid rock reflects strongly. Loose fill, like clay or sediment that has accumulated in a hole over thousands of years, reflects weakly. When you run this equipment across a landscape, you get a cross-sectional image of what is beneath the surface without moving a single shovel of dirt. It is essentially an ultrasound for the Earth. When the Stonehenge Hidden Landscapes team ran their equipment around Durrington Walls, the data that came back was staggering. The shafts were enormous. Each one measured roughly 10 meters across and 5 meters deep. They were not random. They were not naturally occurring sinkholes. A 2025 follow-up study published in the journal Internet Archaeology used electrical resistance tomography to confirm the depths and shapes, and the researchers were now unequivocal. Lead author Vincent Gaffney told the press directly, "They cannot be occurring naturally. It just cannot happen. We think we have nailed it." The shafts form a circle that spans 1.2 miles in diameter. At its center sits the Durrington Walls Henge, one of the largest Neolithic henge monuments in Britain.
Nearly 100 stone monoliths found buried near Stonehenge could be the largest Neolithic monument built in Britain.
On its boundary sites the Larkhill Causewayed enclosure, an older structure built roughly 1,500 years before Durrington Walls itself. The shafts appear to have been deliberately positioned to encompass both sites within a single sacred boundary. Now, think about what that means in practical terms. To place each shaft at a consistent distance from the central henge, the builders would have had to pace off more than 800 meters outward from the center, repeatedly, in multiple directions, maintaining uniform spacing. That requires a counting system. It requires measurement. It requires planning and coordination across a large workforce, using tools made of wood, bone, and antler. No metal, no wheel, no written language. And they did it with a precision that researchers describe as a masterpiece of engineering. Professor Gaffney proposed that the shafts formed a sacred boundary, a cosmological inscription in the Earth itself. While Stonehenge, with its standing stones, was associated with the dead, Durrington Walls was where the living gathered. They feasted there. It was marked not with a fence or a wall, but with massive engineered voids cut into the ground, monuments designed to be invisible from the surface, monuments you would have to know about to understand. The researchers believe the circle may have originally contained more than 30 shafts. Roughly 40% of the area has been lost to modern development. And here is the thing that sits with you after reading through the research. This is the most studied archaeological landscape on Earth. Thousands of researchers have walked this ground for over a century. Yeah, and nobody knew this was there until someone pointed a machine at the dirt. and let the data speak. What else is down there? Hidden acoustic mystery. While one team was scanning beneath the ground, another was studying what happens above it. In 2020, Professor Trevor Cox, an acoustic engineer at the University of Salford, published a study in the Journal of Archaeological Science that approached Stonehenge from a direction nobody had fully explored before. He wanted to know what it sounded like. Not what it sounds like now, with half the stones missing or fallen. What it sounded like when all 157 stones were standing, roughly 4,200 years ago. To find out, he and his colleagues built a 1/12 scale model of the complete monument. They spent months pouring plaster mixed with plastic into 3D printed molds based on laser scans of the actual stones provided by Historic England. Every stone was replicated, including the central horseshoe of the 5 largest trilithon arches and the dozens of smaller blue stones.
The inner blue stones are from Wales, and we now know that the central altar stone is from northeastern Scotland.
That were transported from quarries in Wales more than 140 miles away. The model was placed inside a semi-anechoic chamber at the university, a room lined with foam wedges designed to absorb all escaping sound, recreating the open conditions of Salisbury Plain. They positioned tiny speakers and microphones inside and around the miniature circle and broadcast chirping noises across the full frequency spectrum, from very low to very high, then recorded and analyzed what came back. The results were remarkable. The physical properties of the stones, their size, their shape, their spacing, created an acoustic environment that enhanced whatever was happening inside the circle. Cox compared it to the acoustics of a modern cinema. The sound lingered and swelled within the space in a way that would have been perceptible and dramatic to anyone standing there. But here is the detail that makes this genuinely strange. The acoustic enhancement worked almost exclusively for people inside the stone circle. Anyone standing outside would have heard very little. The stones acted as both an amplifier and a barrier. Sound was contained within the circle, and making the interior experience intense and immersive while keeping the exterior strangely quiet. Susan Graney, the senior properties historian at English Heritage who collaborated on the study, said the results suggest that any rituals taking place inside the circle were intimate events, intended for a small number of people. Cox estimated that fewer than 50 people could have comfortably participated within the central horseshoe of blue stones. 50 people. Out of the hundreds, possibly thousands, who were needed to build the monument. The people who carried the stones, who dragged them across miles of terrain, who shaped them and raised them and fitted the lintels on top, most of them would never have been allowed inside to experience what the stones actually did. The team also tested different configurations of the blue stones, and because archaeological evidence shows they were rearranged multiple times during Stonehenge's history. But the changes made almost no measurable difference to the acoustics, which were dominated by the outer sarsen circle. Whatever the builders were adjusting when they moved the blue stones around, it was not the sound. There is also a separate line of research, explored by musicologist Rupert Till of the University of Huddersfield, who has noted that Stonehenge hums when strong winds blow through it. The stones themselves vibrate. Some of the Welsh bluestones have been observed to produce a ringing sound when struck, earning them the local name of ringing stones.
What we do know is that the giant outer stones are probably sourced locally from England.
Was the acoustic effect intentional? Cox was careful about this. He said that the acoustics did not appear to be the primary reason the monument was built. But the effect was real, and it was significant, and it would have been unmissable to anyone standing inside that circle during a ceremony. Whether the builders designed it deliberately or discovered it after the stones were placed and then used it, the result was the same. Stonehenge was not just something you looked at, it was something you heard, something you felt. Stonehenge's lost stones. Every stone at Stonehenge is an immigrant. Not one of them belongs to Salisbury Plain. And when you trace where they actually came from, the story stops making sense in the best possible way. Start with the big ones, the sarsens. These are the towering uprights and lintels that form the outer circle and the central horseshoe, the stones most people picture when they think of Stonehenge. And they weigh up to 30 tons and stand as tall as 7 meters. For over 400 years, researchers debated where they came from. Then in 2020, Professor David Nash at the University of Brighton finally answered the question. His team, working with English Heritage, used portable X-ray fluorescence spectrometry to analyze all 52 remaining sarsens at the site, and discovered that 50 of them shared a consistent chemical signature. They then matched that signature to sarsen outcrops across southern Britain and found only one match: West Woods, on the edge of the Marlborough Downs, about 15 miles north of the monument. The breakthrough was only possible because a core drilled from Stone 58 during repair work in 1958 was returned to English Heritage from Florida decades later by the family of the original engineer, Robert Phillips. That single core, analyzed through destructive testing, unlocked 3 centuries of speculation. Susan Graney of English Heritage said the overriding objective when sourcing the sarsens was size, that the builders wanted the biggest, most substantial stones they could find, and it made sense to get them from as close as possible. 15 miles with 30-ton stones, no wheels, no metal tools, just ropes, timber sledges, and human coordination on a scale that still defies easy explanation. Now go further. The bluestones. These are the smaller stones in the inner circle and horseshoe, weighing 1 to 3 tons each. Geologists have known since the 1920s that they came from the Preseli Hills in Pembrokeshire, West Wales, about 140 miles away. But it was not until 2019 that a team led by Professor Mike Parker Pearson of UCL pinpointed the exact quarries. At an outcrop called Carn Godog on the north slope of the Preseli Hills, the team identified recesses in the rock face where pillars had been extracted. Unlike Egyptian quarries where obelisks were carved from solid rock, the Welsh outcrops formed natural vertical columns that could be separated by driving wooden wedges into the joints and letting rain swell the wood until the pillar split free. The quarry workers then lowered each stone onto a prepared platform, a loading bay, from which it could be dragged away along trackways. Charcoal recovered from the soft sediment of a hollowed-out track at the nearby Craig Rosyfellan quarry, and from the platform at Carn Godog, dated to around 3000 BC. Parker Pearson noted that every other Neolithic monument in Europe was built of megaliths brought from no more than 10 miles away. Stonehenge shattered that pattern by a factor of 14. And the quarries being on the north side of the Preseli Hills cast serious doubt on the old theory that the bluestones were rafted south to Milford Haven and paddled up the Bristol Channel. Instead, the stones may have gone overland the entire way, and then, in August 2024, the story got even stranger. A study published in the journal Nature, led by Anthony Clark, a PhD student at Curtin University in Australia, revealed that the altar stone, the 6-ton sandstone slab lying at the very heart of Stonehenge, did not come from Wales at all. For over a century, it had been assumed to share an origin with the bluestones. Clark's team analyzed the age and chemistry of mineral grains within fragments of the stone and found that the grains were mostly between 1 and 2 billion years old, with other minerals around 450 million years old. That chemical fingerprint matched only one geological formation in Britain, the old red sandstone of the Orcadian Basin in northeast Scotland, at least 750 kilometers away. Co-author Dr. Robert Ixer of UCL called it a genuinely shocking result and said it raises 2 critical questions. Why and exactly how was the altar stone transported from the very north of Scotland to Salisbury Plain? Forests blocked overland routes. The wheel had not yet arrived in Britain. Marine transport remains the most feasible explanation. But even that demands navigating the entire eastern or western coastline of the island with a 6-ton block of sandstone aboard. No name for the people who did this survives, no written instruction, no diary, just the stone itself, sitting at the center of a monument that drew its materials from the far edges of an island, as if the act of gathering was the entire point. The celestial code. Stonehenge is aligned to the solstices. Everyone knows that. On the summer solstice, the sun rises over the heel stone and its light pours through the central axis of the monument. On the winter solstice, the sun sets along the same alignment in the opposite direction. This has been documented for centuries and is the most widely understood feature of the site. But the solstice alignment is just the beginning. The recent research suggests that Stonehenge may have functioned as something far more sophisticated than a simple sunrise marker. In 2022, a study published in the journal Antiquity proposed that the arrangement of the stones represents a functional solar calendar capable of tracking a full year of 365¼ days, calibrated by the solstice alignments. The monument's layout, with its specific number of stones and subdivisions, may have allowed its users to count days, weeks, and months. And beyond the sun, there is the moon. The lunar standstill cycle, an astronomical phenomenon in which the moon reaches its most extreme rising and setting positions, occurs on an 18.6-year cycle. Tracking this requires observation across nearly 2 decades, far beyond the lifetime commitment of a single observer. It requires generational knowledge. It requires a system for recording and transmitting astronomical data without writing. There is compelling evidence that Stonehenge's builders tracked this cycle.
One of the most mysterious. Why was Stonehenge built in southwest England 5,000 years ago?
Certain stones and alignments correspond to the extreme positions of the moon during the major standstill. To achieve this level of astronomical precision, the builders would have needed to observe and record the moon's movements consistently for at least 18 years, then pass that knowledge to the next generation of observers, who would continue the work. Think about what that means. These were farming communities. They had no telescopes, no writing, no mathematics in the way we understand the term. And yet they built a structure that encoded astronomical cycles spanning decades, aligned to celestial events with a precision that modern researchers have confirmed using computer-reconstructed star maps. There is a tendency in popular culture to treat ancient people as intellectually limited. The word primitive gets thrown around casually. But the researchers who have spent their careers studying Stonehenge have consistently arrived at the same conclusion. These people were not primitive. They were solving problems of engineering, astronomy, logistics, and social organization at a scale that challenges modern assumptions about what was possible in the Neolithic period. Richard Bates, the St. Andrews professor who worked on the Durrington Walls discovery, said it clearly. So sophisticated practices demonstrate that these people were so in tune with natural events to an extent that we can barely conceive in the modern world we live in today. And there is an emotional weight to that realization that deserves a moment. Imagine being a researcher who has spent a career studying this period. You run a new analysis, the data comes back, and it shows that people 4,500 years ago were tracking astronomical cycles with a precision that requires multi-generational coordination. You are sitting in a lab, looking at a screen, and you realize that the people your textbooks called primitive were solving problems of time and space with a sophistication that our own civilization did not fully appreciate until the invention of the telescope. That is not just an academic finding, that is a humbling one. The kind that makes a researcher sit back in their chair and reconsider everything they thought they knew about human capability. The celestial alignments also raise a question about purpose that goes deeper than astronomy. Why build something that tracks cycles you will never personally see completed? The lunar standstill takes 18.6 years. The person who begins observing it may not be alive to see the full cycle confirmed. The decision to build a structure around that cycle is not practical in any immediate sense. It is an act of faith in the future. It is a community saying, what we know matters beyond our own lifetimes. That is not primitive thinking. That is the foundation of civilization itself. Who controlled Stonehenge? Behind every stone and every pit lies a question we rarely dare to ask. Who decided to build Stonehenge? Way to go. What to carry? The scale of what happened here is staggering when you lay out the actual numbers. Professor Mike Parker Pearson of University College London, who led the Stonehenge Riverside project.
This World Heritage Site is full of prehistoric monuments. Some of them the same date as Stonehenge, some of them older, some of them more recent.
Estimated that during some period between 2600 and 2400 BC, as many as 4,000 people gathered at the nearby settlement of Durrington Walls for seasonal festivals. That number comes from analysis of animal teeth found at the site. Strontium isotope testing on those teeth showed that some of the animals had been brought from as far away as the Scottish Highlands. People were not just walking in from the next village, and they were traveling from across the entire island, bringing livestock with them, converging on Salisbury Plain in numbers that would have been extraordinary for a Neolithic farming society. And when they arrived, they feasted. A 2015 study published in the journal Antiquity, led by Dr. Oliver Craig of the University of York, analyzed hundreds of pottery fragments and over 38,000 animal bone fragments recovered from the settlement's refuse pits. The evidence pointed to mass consumption, particularly of pigs slaughtered at around 9 months of age, suggesting planned autumn and winter kills timed for large communal gatherings. The cooking methods included both indoor hearth-based boiling and large-scale outdoor barbecue-style roasting, evidenced by distinctive burn patterns on the bones. Craig said the findings showed a greater degree of culinary organization than was expected for this period of British prehistory, and that the evidence of food sharing and activity zoning suggested Durrington Walls was a well-organized working community. Parker Pearson added that animals were brought from all over Britain to be barbecued and cooked in open-air mass gatherings. But here is the detail that shifts the picture. The rich diet of pork, beef, and dairy at Durrington Walls suggested to the research team that these workers were likely not slaves or coerced laborers. They were fed well. They were organized. They operated within a shared understanding of how food should be prepared, consumed, and disposed of across different areas of the settlement. Residential zones used pots for cooking meat and dairy. By deciding who eats what and where. And yet, deciding who eats what and where. And yet there is no evidence of a permanent ruling settlement at Stonehenge itself. Durrington Walls was temporary. People came, they worked, they gathered, and then they left. Parker Pearson proposed that Stonehenge was a domain of the dead, while Durrington Walls was for the living, with the River Avon serving as a ritual passage between the two. The wooden circle at Durrington was oriented toward the rising sun on midwinter solstice, opposing the solar alignments at the stone circle, two worlds connected by water. But organizing 4,000 people across seasonal gatherings, coordinating the transport of stones from Wales and Scotland, maintaining astronomical observations across generations, feeding an enormous workforce with livestock driven in from hundreds of miles away that requires centralized authority. Someone had to hold the plan. Someone had to make the decisions that spanned decades. There are no palaces, no thrones, no names inscribed in stone. But the monument itself is the evidence. Whoever controlled Stonehenge controlled something immensely powerful, a structure that bent sound inward, a structure aligned to the heavens, a structure built from stones gathered from the far edges of an island. And the acoustic research showed that fewer than 50 people could have participated in rituals inside the central horseshoe. 50 people. In a monument built by thousands. That is not a gathering of equals. That is a stage, and someone was running the show. The stones still stand. The shafts still lie hidden beneath the earth. The alignments still trace the movements of the heavens. And yet, after 5,000 years, we are only beginning to understand what was built, why it was built, and who it was built for. What other secrets are still buried, waiting for the right eyes and the right questions to uncover them? The story of Stonehenge is far from over.